Welcome to Life Stories, where love is complicated, loyalty is tested, and sometimes the people who claim to know you best are the ones who see you the least. Imagine sitting at the dinner table with your family pretending everything is fine until your father casually asks if the $2,000 he's been sending every month is enough, and you realize you've never seen a dime. The fork slips from your hand, your world tilts, and suddenly the silence in the room says more than anyone dares to. This is a story about survival that looked like strength, a daughter erased in plain sight, and the quiet rebellion of choosing to speak when it's easier to stay silent. It's about the kind of betrayal that wears pearls and smiles through holidays and the long, painful road back to being seen, not just as resilient, but as worthy. So settle in. This story doesn't begin with a breakdown. It begins with a question no one expected to be asked. The dining room looked exactly the same, like someone had pressed pause 20 years ago and never hit play again. Same polished oak table, same heavy-backed chairs that groaned when you shifted wrong. Same soft jazz bleeding from the corner speaker, some nostalgic Miles Davis or maybe Chet Baker, just loud enough to sound curated, not human. The turkey had been carved with surgical precision, Dad's hands steady like they were still in the OR. And Mom, of course, had made her signature roasted squash, brushed with maple and cinnamon like always. I was 23 and starving, not in the poetic quarter-life crisis kind of way. Literally starving. My last real meal was 3 days ago, a leftover grilled cheese from the tutoring center fridge. I had been pulling triple shifts between anatomy labs, bartending, and freelance tutoring just to make rent. I told myself it was temporary, just a rough patch, just until I caught up. But when Dad handed me the mashed potatoes and casually asked, "Is the $2,000 enough each month?" my fork slipped. I blinked. "What money?" He hesitated, his smile twitching. "The transfers, sweetheart, every month, since August." My throat tightened. "I haven't gotten anything." He looked at Mom. She didn't return his gaze, just delicately dabbed her lips with a linen napkin. "I thought it was better used elsewhere," she said, her voice calm like she was discussing church donations, not her daughter's ability to eat. "Better used?" Dad repeated, louder now. "You told me you'd handle it." "I did," she said evenly. "Ava's program is more expensive. You know how competitive fashion is." "And Elise is what?" His voice cracked. "Supposed to survive on scraps?" Mom reached for her water. Her hand trembled slightly. "Ava needs support. It's an image-based industry. Networking, presence. It's not like med school. Elise's, she's resilient. She always figures it out." I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just sat there, stunned, doing the math in my head. Since August. That was 5 months. At $2,000 a month. $10,000. Money meant for rent, groceries, textbooks, hell, even a new pair of shoes to replace the ones I had stapled together last week behind the bar. "I asked once," I said, voice low. "You told me there was nothing left after Ava's tuition." Dad looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time since high school. He looked wrecked. "You're telling me you've had nothing this whole time?" I nodded. "I've been skipping meals. I work until I black out. I sleep on a futon that smells like bleach. But yeah, I'm fine." "Don't do this here," Mom said tightly. "It's Thanksgiving." The room felt colder than the Chicago wind waiting outside. I stood, my plate untouched. "I need some air." Outside, the wind punched through my jacket. I leaned against the porch railing, watching brittle leaves scrape along the pavement. The silence was thick, like grief. But it wasn't just about the money. It hadn't been for a long time. I remembered the night I collapsed at work, tray of cocktails midair, someone waving from the far end of the bar, the sound of a glass shattering, and then nothing. I woke up in a hospital bed. My manager said he called my parents. Left voicemails. No one came. 2 days later, Nate, my lab partner who smelled like detergent and cinnamon gum, showed up at my door with a pan of baked ziti and a look that made me want to cry harder than the IV needle had. He said, "You look like you're disappearing," and sat with me while I ate. I didn't even ask how he found my address. Mom finally texted a week later, "Glad you're okay. Can you send Ava the name of that skincare brand you liked?" Then, "Don't forget to eat." I stared at the screen like it was in another language. Later that day, Ava posted a photo from a rooftop brunch in West Hollywood. Mimosas, gold-rimmed sunglasses, a caption that said, "Thanks, Mom. No better way to start the day." I stopped eating after that. When I finally called Ava, I made my voice light, casual. She talked for 15 minutes straight about a shoot in Pasadena, how they ran out of almond milk at her favorite cafe, how her stylist just didn't get the vibe. I asked carefully, "How do you manage it financially? LA isn't cheap." She laughed. "Mom wires me $3,500 every month, sometimes more if there's an event." My mouth went dry. "She says it's investing in the dream," Ava added. "Anyway, how are your classes?" I barely remember what I said. I just remember hanging up and staring at my cracked phone screen, then pulling out my laptop and booking the cheapest flight back home I could find. 2 layovers, a 6-hour delay. No clue what I was going to say when I got there, but I knew I couldn't stay quiet anymore. At dinner the next night, the food was simpler. Chicken salad, lentil soup, nothing extravagant. I barely touched it. Dad watched me, eyes narrowed. "You've lost weight, I guess." He paused. "Is the $2,000 not covering enough?" I looked at him, heart pounding. He still didn't know. "There were no transfers, Dad, not one." His fork clattered against the plate. "Leona?" Mom didn't lift her eyes. "I've been sending it to Ava." The air sucked out of the room. "She needs it more," Mom said. "She's in fashion. That world's brutal. Elise is strong." "I don't need to eat?" I cut in. "I don't need heat, a working laptop?" Dad stood, slow, like his body didn't know how to move without breaking something. "You told me she was fine." "She always is." This time when he looked at me, it wasn't confusion, it was guilt and grief. Later that night, he knocked on my door. I didn't answer. He came in anyway, sat on the edge of the bed. "She told me she was sending it every month. I thought you were okay, comfortable, not struggling to breathe." I didn't speak. "She always said you were independent, that you didn't need as much, that you'd find a way." "I did," I said. "I just shouldn't have had to." The next morning, he handed me a manila envelope. Inside was a stack of printouts, bank statements, transfer histories, a breakdown of the trust fund that had been split between Ava and me when we were 10. Only one side had been touched, Ava's. $250,000 redirected, quietly, consistently. Since the month I started grad school, Dad looked exhausted. "She told me it was for both of you. I trusted her." He called a lawyer that afternoon. By the end of the week, he had filed for legal separation. And just like that, the house that once felt like tradition cracked wide open and let the cold, necessary truth flood in. What would you do if the people who were supposed to protect you quietly chose someone else? Have you ever been told you're strong as an excuse to be abandoned? What Elise does next won't heal the past, but it might finally give her the power to rewrite the future. Continue to part 2. The house felt different now. Not quieter, emptier, like someone had taken a needle to the seams of our family and let all the air out. I stayed 3 more nights. Dad moved through the days like he was trying to replay every conversation he'd missed, every sign he'd ignored. Mom, on the other hand, folded laundry that didn't need folding, rearranged cabinets that hadn't been opened in years. She didn't speak to me, not really, just polite nothings. "Dinner's ready if you're hungry," or "Don't forget your scarf. It's cold." But not once did she say my name. Not once did she ask if I was okay. I found Dad in his study the next morning, glasses low on his nose, sifting through printed spreadsheets and transaction logs like they were crime scene photos. He didn't hear me until I was right behind him. "Elise," he said, startled, "I need you to know. I didn't just believe her. I handed her access." He held up a document, one I didn't recognize. "The trust was supposed to be split evenly between you and Ava, locked until 25. That's what I thought. But she..." His fingers curled, the paper trembling. "She found a workaround, transferred over $250,000 to an account in Ava's name. I didn't catch it because I trusted her." I didn't know whether to feel betrayed or just stupid for not seeing it sooner. I asked, "What happens now?" "I've already spoken with the attorney. We're petitioning to reverse the transfers. Legally, they were unauthorized, but it'll take time." Time. That was the thing no one could refund. That night, the arguing started again. Sharper. Meaner. You didn't even ask me, Dad said, voice raised for once. That money was for both our daughters. She needed it more, Mom snapped. She's in an industry that requires a certain image. And what about Elise? He shot back. What was she supposed to do while you were dressing Ava in Dior? The silence after that felt like a free fall. My name echoed down the hallway, not thrown, not shamed, just said and defended. Later, Ava called. Her voice was tight. Mom says I'm only getting $1,000 a month now. Is that true? Yeah, I said. Dad's handling finances now. She was quiet. Then, I can't live on that. Rent, materials, classes, I know. Another pause. I waited. She didn't ask me for help. She was smarter than that. But she did say, do you really think this is fair? I think it's overdue. She hung up. That night, I caught Mom slipping an envelope into her purse in the kitchen. She didn't see me watching from the hallway, but I knew what it was. Later, I told Dad. He didn't yell, just stared at her across the counter like she was someone he'd never quite known. I can't do this anymore, he said. I was trying to protect her, she said softly. And who was protecting Elise? She's fine, Mom whispered. She's always been fine. He looked so tired. You keep saying that like it justifies everything. I just wanted the best for Ava. And what did Elise get? Mom didn't answer. The next morning, he called the attorney again. By the end of the week, he'd filed for legal separation. I didn't cry. I didn't even flinch. I just stood by the window as snow began to fall, soft, slow, almost careful. Back in Philadelphia, things changed in quiet ways. I dropped 2 bar shifts, kept tutoring, ate full meals, slept without a high-pitched whir of exhaustion in my ears. My grades soared, not because I got smarter, but because I wasn't starving anymore. I bought new sneakers. Not designer, just whole. Ava started texting more. At first, it was pictures of outfits she styled at a local boutique. Not high fashion, but handmade. Raw hems, upcycled denim. Her captions were different now. Less glossy, more grounded. They're not couture, she wrote once, but they feel more like me. I didn't know what to say, so I just replied, I'm glad. Then one night she called. No warning, just silence for a few seconds after I picked up. I think I finally see it now, she said. See what? What it cost you. All of it. I leaned against my desk, notebook still open, half highlighted. I didn't want to believe it, she said, because if I did, I'd have to admit Mom made things easier for me, and that meant she made them harder for you. I didn't speak. I'm sorry. I don't need you to feel guilty, I said. Just don't pretend it was fair. I won't. She cleared her throat. I heard the clink of glass, probably tea. Ava hated alcohol, said it made everything taste like sadness. Are you going home for the holidays? I haven't decided. Dad's going, she said. I am too. A pause. Maybe we could go together? I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either. Have you ever mistaken survival for strength and been punished for it? When Elise returns home, one last confrontation will force her to face the person who hurt her most, with a truth she can no longer ignore. Don't miss part 3. The snow had just started to fall again when our cab pulled up in front of the house. Ava stepped out first, her coat pulled tight around her waist, the same coat she used to post about like it was a trophy. But now, she just wore it. No filters, no captions. Dad followed with the bags. I came last, my boots crunching the salt-stained driveway that had once been my shortcut to school. The porch light was on. A soft glow like the house didn't know yet whether to welcome us or brace itself. Mom opened the door wearing a plain navy sweater I didn't recognize. Her hair had more gray than last year. She looked smaller somehow, like life had started trimming away the pieces she clung to. Hi, she said, her voice even. Come in. No grand hug, no apology, but also no denial, and that felt bigger than it should have. We sat around the same table where it had all cracked. The oak still shined under the overhead light, but it felt different now, like the table knew what it had heard. The food was simple: roasted vegetables, a store-bought pumpkin pie, turkey that Dad had accidentally overcooked by an hour. No one brought up last year, but no one pretended it hadn't happened either. We passed dishes. Ava complimented the stuffing. Dad asked about my pharmacology class, and Mom said she was still adjusting to her new retail schedule. She worked at a home goods now. Said it was temporary. I didn't ask more. After dinner, we moved into the living room. The silence settled again, softer this time. I watched Ava pick at a loose thread on her sleeve while Dad scrolled through a playlist on his phone. He finally settled on something slow and familiar. Nina Simone, I think. I don't remember who broke the silence first, but at some point, Mom turned to me and said, "I didn't think you'd come back." I studied her face. It didn't look defensive, just tired, honest. "I almost didn't," I said. She nodded like she expected that. "You were always the one who didn't need anyone. That's what you told yourself." She blinked. "What do you mean?" I exhaled. "You called it strength, independence, but you were really just letting go of me, piece by piece. You didn't see the cost because you were so sure I'd cover it myself." She flinched just slightly. "It wasn't supposed to be punishment, but it was." I said, "You made me pay for being the one who didn't break down." She was quiet. Then softly, "Ava needed me. I needed you too. You just didn't notice." Ava didn't say anything. She just reached over and gently placed her hand over mine. It felt tentative, like she wasn't sure she had the right. I didn't move it. "You know," Mom whispered, "I kept every art project you made in middle school. Every one. They're in a box in the attic. I didn't think you cared about that kind of thing. You never asked. Because I thought it was easier not to want anything," I said. "Wanting made me weak, and I couldn't afford to be weak." "I thought I was making it easier for you," she said. "I really did. But you made it lonelier." She nodded, the weight of it finally settling in her eyes. "I see that now. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe it was the first crack in the wall we'd all built so high for so long, we forgot who we were hiding from." That night, I slept in my childhood bedroom. The posters were gone, replaced by bare walls and a single bookshelf Dad had filled with new paperbacks. On the nightstand was a plain white envelope. Inside, the final tuition receipt, paid in full. Underneath it, a folded note in Dad's handwriting. "This is yours, not because you earned it, but because I finally saw you." I read it twice, then placed it gently back into the drawer. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was fighting just to exist. Ava knocked on the door in the morning. "Walk with me?" she asked. We walked the perimeter of the block, the cold, biting, but manageable. She talked about a new project she was working on, using dead stock fabrics, teaching herself to sew properly, maybe even launching something of her own next year. She didn't ask for advice or praise. She just wanted me to know. When we rounded the corner toward the house again, she stopped. "I know I said it already," she said, "but I want to say it again. I'm sorry for how easy I let it be. For me. For too long." "I'm not angry," I said. "Not anymore. I just don't want us to lie to each other again." "We won't." I wasn't sure if that was a promise she could keep, but I believed she wanted to. Inside, Mom was setting the table for breakfast. Dad poured coffee, humming something tuneless. The house didn't feel fixed, but it felt honest, like we weren't pretending anymore. Later that day, as I zipped up my suitcase, Mom appeared at the door again. She held a folded quilt. "This was your grandmother's," she said. "She gave it to me when I moved out. I always meant to give it to you, but I thought you wouldn't want it." I didn't say anything. I just took it. At the airport, Ava hugged me tightly. "Next time," she said, "I'm coming to Philly. You pick the restaurant." I smiled. "No mimosas." She rolled her eyes. "Fine, but at least let me order an appetizer." As I boarded the plane, I looked down at the folded quilt in my lap. There were tiny stitches along the seams, some loose, some tight, some a little crooked, but they all held. I traced one with my thumb and thought about what it meant to stay, what it meant to leave, what it meant to finally be seen. What part of this story stayed with you the most? Share your thoughts below. Comment 100 if this story moved you. Let us know where you're watching from. Tag a friend who needs to hear this. Thank you for watching Life Stories.